My boss stole my presentation, but when the words presented by me flashed on the giant screen behind him, his career ended in 3 minutes flat. Yeah, I know. Sounds insane. But that moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was months of quiet humiliation, stolen ideas, and me biting my tongue until it almost bled. I work in tech, not some startup with beanbags and kombucha, a mid sized corporation where politics matter more than talent. My boss, Richard, loved taking credit for other people's work, especially mine. Every time I'd build something innovative, he'd stroll into meetings, throw in a few buzzwords, and suddenly he was the visionary. And me? Just the execution guy. At first, I let it slide. I told myself, it's fine, he's management. That's how it works. But after a while, watching him smile while my ideas won him praise started to burn like acid in my chest. He'd even wink at me sometimes, as if saying, good job, kid. Maybe one day you'll get to sit at the big table. The breaking point came when I spent 2 months perfecting a presentation for a new data automation project. It was my baby. Late nights, pizza boxes, and way too much caffeine. I had every chart, every prediction model, every visual polished to perfection. I was proud of it. For once, I thought maybe I'd finally get recognized. But then, the day before the pitch to upper management, Richard called me into his office. He smiled, that corporate predator smile. Hey, Mark, he said casually, I'll be presenting tomorrow. You've done great work, but leadership needs someone senior to handle it. I froze. You mean you'll be presenting my project? He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers like a movie villain. It's not about ownership, Mark. It's about results. You'll get your time, just not tomorrow. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, seething. I replayed that smug grin in my head over and over. My hands were shaking, but not from anger, from clarity. I realized this wasn't the first time he'd done it, and it wouldn't be the last, unless I stopped him. So I started digging. Every version of the project I'd worked on was in our shared system. Every email, timestamp, code commit, every file edit, it was all traceable. I knew that if I could collect enough proof, I could show everyone exactly who built the foundation of that project. But I didn't want revenge yet. I wanted insurance. Something that would make him think he'd already won while I quietly built the perfect trap. When I got into work the next morning, I acted normal. Congratulated him before the meeting. Even handed him the flash drive like an obedient little subordinate. He didn't notice the faint label I'd written on it. Version 1.3 Demo Draft. The real version, the one with the automation logic that made the entire system's work, stayed safely on my private drive. Password protected, time-stamped, and watermarked with my name in the metadata. As Richard walked into the boardroom with my slides in hand, I sat at my desk pretending to debug code, heart pounding like a drum. I wasn't ready to strike yet, but for the first time in months, I wasn't scared anymore. The day after Richard hijacked my presentation, the office buzzed with fake praise. Richard, that was brilliant, they said. You really nailed that automation pitch. I could barely look up from my desk without wanting to laugh. Brilliant? He didn't even understand half the formulas behind those charts. Still, I smiled, nodded, acted like I was happy to be part of the team. Inside, though, I was already building my case. Not for HR, not even for revenge yet, for truth. Because in places like this, truth only matters when you can prove it. That night, I stayed late. The cleaners had already passed through, lights dimmed to half power. The hum of servers and my own breathing filled the silence. I opened my laptop and started tracing digital footprints. Every file, every edit, every line of data that had my fingerprints all over it. Our internal system logged everything. Each file version carried my user ID, timestamps, and change history. I downloaded them all, one by one, folder by folder. I didn't want a gotcha moment based on emotion. I wanted something indisputable. I even opened old email chains, messages where I'd proposed key features, attached prototypes, and asked for feedback. In every thread, I saw my words, and Richard's short replies like, "Looks good. I'll take it from here." That one sentence became his pattern. Every time I created something, he'd swoop in near the end and finalize it, just enough to slap his name on it. But this time, I wasn't just angry, I was strategic. I backed up everything not on a company drive, but on a secure personal cloud under an encrypted folder named Receipts. Yeah, it was a little dramatic, but it felt right. The next morning, I went in early and checked our task manager logs. They showed each time a file was uploaded or modified, and there it was. A trail of edits leading straight to Richard, right after I'd handed over my draft. He didn't even try to hide it. Still, proof alone wasn't enough. People like Richard were slick talkers. If I just accused him, he'd spin it around. Say I was confused or bitter or didn't understand corporate structure. I needed something no one could argue with. That's when I remembered something one of our data engineers mentioned months ago. Our company software automatically embedded metadata into PowerPoint files, including the author's name and the last saved timestamp. If that was true, I had a weapon he couldn't even see coming. I checked the presentation he'd used at the meeting. It was on our shared drive now, marked Final Richard. I right clicked, opened Properties, and scrolled. There it was. Author Mark H. created on. 2 weeks before Richard even scheduled his big reveal. I swear I sat there for a full minute just staring at that line. My pulse slowed down. My anger turned cold. Sharp. Because now I didn't just suspect he stole it. I had forensic proof, but instead of going to HR, I saved that data quietly. I screenshotted it, saved it as a PDF, backed it up 3 times. Then I deleted every trace of my search history from the company system. This wasn't about catching him once. This was about building a record, a complete airtight timeline showing every time he'd stolen my work. The next few weeks, I played it cool. Let him think he was safe. Let him brag to upper management about his vision. I even complimented his leadership style. Meanwhile, I started building a private archive of every project he'd touched. Every good idea that mysteriously appeared in his slides had started in one of my drafts. Every night I documented time, date, version, who accessed what. By the end of the month, I had a digital diary of deception and a plan forming in the back of my mind that would make sure the next time he tried to steal my work, he'd expose himself without me saying a word. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to turn his favorite weapon, my silence, into the trap that would ruin him. By the time I had weeks of evidence stored and labeled, something inside me shifted. The fear I'd lived with for so long, the kind that made me smile while being humiliated, was gone. What replaced it wasn't rage, it was focus. Cold, clear, deliberate focus. Still, I knew better than to go at this alone. People like Richard didn't fall because of one mistake. They fell when everyone finally saw the truth, and I needed witnesses who couldn't be bought or intimidated. That's when I thought of Emily. She was a senior analyst, quiet but razor sharp, known for being a perfectionist who documented everything. If there was anyone who'd appreciate the value of proof, it was her. I caught her one evening in the break room while she was microwaving leftover pasta. The place smelled like burnt cheese and tired ambition. "Hey, Emily," I said casually, leaning against the counter. "You ever notice how some people around here get credit for work they didn't do?" She gave me a look that was both amused and exhausted. "You mean like everyone?" I laughed, but there was an edge to it. "What if I told you I could prove it?" She paused, fork midair. "Prove what exactly?" I hesitated just enough to seem cautious, then lowered my voice. "That Richard's been presenting my projects as his own. Not just one, several. I've got timestamps, metadata, everything. I just need someone to sanity check what I've found. Someone who doesn't owe him anything. Emily stared at me for a long second, then set down her fork. Send me what you've got. I'll take a look. But if this is what I think it is, you'd better be careful. She wasn't kidding. In our company, Richard had friends, people who benefited from his leadership. Crossing him could mean career suicide, but Emily didn't scare easy. Later that night, I sent her a limited access folder with only the logs and timestamps. Nothing personal, no accusations, just data. The next morning, she showed up at my desk with a cup of coffee and a look I hadn't seen before. Respect. This is real, she said quietly. You have enough here to make an ethics case. But if you go to HR now, he'll spin it. You need corroboration. I nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. I have one more person in mind. That person was a new developer named Carlos. He was young, talented, and, most importantly, not yet conditioned to fear Richard. I'd noticed he wasn't afraid to question bad instructions or call out errors in meetings. That kind of blunt honesty was risky, but it made him perfect. I invited him for a coffee outside the office, away from company ears. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to test his reaction. You ever feel like some people take more credit than they deserve? Carlos chuckled. Man, if I had $1 for every time I fixed something and watched my boss take the bow. He shrugged. But I document everything I do. Every line of code, every test. Habit from my last job. That was music to my ears. Keep doing that, I said. And maybe keep backups, just in case. Over the next few weeks, the three of us quietly created a private audit trail. Every change, every submission went through a shared verification process. Nothing public, nothing suspicious. Just a subtle, silent network of truth. Meanwhile, Richard strutted around like a king. He was already planning another innovation demo for the senior executives, this time a bigger one. He even started dropping hints that he'd developed a game-changing feature in our new automation suite. The same feature I'd been refining for months. But this time, it wasn't just me who knew the truth. Emily had her own backups. Carlos had version control logs. And I had a growing digital arsenal that could tell the whole story with one click. The trap wasn't ready yet, but the stage was being built, piece by piece, quietly, patiently. And Richard? He had no idea that the people he dismissed as replaceable were the same ones tightening the noose around his reputation. I didn't want to ruin him just yet, not until everyone could see without a shadow of doubt what kind of man he really was. So I smiled, played the loyal subordinate, and waited. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't fast or loud, it's surgical. And mine was just getting started. By the time Richard started, bragging about the new feature he'd supposedly created, I was already 10 steps ahead. Every file he touched from me was a time bomb. Not a dangerous one, just the kind that exposes lies. Quiet, digital, invisible. It started with a simple idea, a hidden watermark. Not something printed or obvious, but buried deep in the code and design layers of every slide, every chart, every diagram. Metadata, version hashes, and even pixel-level identifiers. Things that no one would notice, until they needed to. One evening, long after everyone had gone home, I sat in my cubicle with the glow of the monitor lighting up my face. The air was heavy and still. I was adding my signature, a pattern of invisible data that spelled out MH original across multiple files. You couldn't see it unless you opened the file's binary code or checked the metadata tree. It wasn't just protection, it was insurance. I tested it by copying one of my slides onto a fresh presentation. When I opened the file info, there it was again. My initials time-stamped, immutable. Even if Richard copied every single element, the mark would follow. I leaned back in my chair, smiling for the first time in weeks. It wasn't revenge yet, but it was power. A few days later, he came by my desk, holding a cup of coffee and pretending to be friendly. Hey, Mark, you're working on those performance visuals for the next meeting, right? Yeah, I said, keeping my tone light. Just polishing the data model. Good, good, he replied. Send me the final version when you're done. I'll take it from there. There it was again. That line. I'll take it from there. Translation? I'll take the credit, thanks. But I nodded. Of course. Inside, I was already setting the trap. I uploaded a preview version to the shared drive. One with all the visible charts and text, but without the animation triggers or back-end formulas that made it work. Those parts were password protected in my local copy, tied to my account credentials. He downloaded the decoy as expected, and within an hour I saw the sync notification pop up. File copied by Richard. Perfect. Over the next week, he polished my project, completely unaware that his masterpiece carried invisible proof of its true creator. I'd even embedded my initials into the Slide Master's hex code, a trick I learned years ago from a digital forensics tutorial. Meanwhile, Emily double-checked the code structure to make sure my tags were untraceable but verifiable. Carlos ran a test version to ensure the metadata remained even after file compression. Every result came back clean. My fingerprints were locked in, unerasable. When Richard previewed the deck in the team meeting, everyone applauded. He smiled like a king, thanking me in passing. Mark helped out on some technical stuff. That was his way of rewriting reality in real time. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was memorizing every word, every tone. Every false compliment was another brick in the wall he was building around himself. The same wall I would later pull down. That night, I documented everything: date, time, copy history, system logs. Emily kept a mirrored folder, and Carlos added verification signatures. If Richard ever tried to deny it, the proof wouldn't just come from me, it would come from 3 independent sources. What he didn't know was that the watermark wasn't the only hidden layer. I'd also inserted a short script, harmless but revealing. If someone opened the file in a new environment, like his laptop, it would automatically embed the user ID and timestamp of whoever saved it next. That meant when he presented the slides from his computer, the file itself would record it, linking his device ID directly to my original content. No accusations, no drama, just evidence that spoke for itself. The plan was working, slowly, quietly, methodically. And Richard? He was about to step right into the next phase, where the walls would start to crack, and he wouldn't even realize it. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't to fight back right away. It's to let arrogance dig its own grave. One click, one file, one watermark at a time. It was a Thursday morning when the first crack appeared in Richard's smooth, polished act. He called me into his office, that sterile glass box with the fake motivational quotes on the wall, and told me to close the door. His tone was casual, but the look in his eyes was different this time. Harder. Mark, he started, swirling his coffee like he was about to deliver life advice instead of another insult. I've been noticing you've been holding back. I blinked. Holding back? Yeah? He leaned forward. You've got potential, but lately you've been too protective of your work. I asked for the final version of the automation project days ago, and you still haven't sent it. I kept my face blank. I thought you wanted me to polish it before handing it over. He smiled, that practiced corporate grin that never touched his eyes. Don't play games. You and I both know I'm presenting it next week, so I'll need the final files by the end of today. There it was. The command, sharp and arrogant. I could almost see the thought running behind his smile. He'll fold. He always does. But this time, I didn't. I'll send what's ready, I said calmly, meeting his stare. Some parts aren't finalized yet. He dropped the smile. Mark, don't make this complicated. You're replaceable, you know that, right? The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I just nodded slowly. If that's how you see it. His voice dropped lower, colder. If I don't have that file today, I'll make sure you're not on the project anymore. Maybe even reassigned. He wanted me scared. He wanted me to break. But instead of arguing, I gave him something better. Silence. Just a slow nod. Then I walked out of his office like nothing happened. The moment I sat down at my desk, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but adrenaline. The old me would have panicked, sent him everything just to avoid conflict. But now, I had something he didn't. Control. I opened my file manager and created a new folder called Demo's version. Inside it, I placed the decoy slides. Polished visuals, basic animation, but missing the automation logic that made the whole thing work. I stripped out every key script and replaced them with dummy formulas. Then I uploaded it to the shared drive under a name that would make him feel safe. Final VRD complete. A few minutes later, I saw the notification. File accessed by Richard. He didn't even wait an hour before calling out from his office. Got it. Thanks, Mark. I smiled to myself. Anytime, boss. But that wasn't the only move I made. I also set up a breadcrumb trail. Small clues hidden inside the file properties and project logs that would link every piece of the data back to me. Emily helped refine the wording in our task manager so it looked routine, but timestamped my contributions perfectly. Carlos double-checked that the automated sync still showed me as the original author. By the end of the day, everything was in place. Richard thought he had control, but what he really had was a glossy shell. A file that looked impressive until someone tried to run it. Then it would fail. And when it did, only one person could fix it. Me. Later that evening, I caught Emily by the elevators. He just threatened me, I said quietly. Told me I was replaceable. She frowned. That's a mistake on his part. Yeah, I said, a big one. We didn't say anything else. We didn't have to. That night, I walked home through the city, the neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small or trapped. I felt steady, dangerous even, because I knew exactly how this would play out. Next week, Richard would walk into that big presentation, full of confidence, thinking he was the genius behind it all. But when those slides stopped working halfway through, when the charts refused to load, and when his face went pale in front of senior management, I'd be right there, calm and ready, waiting for the moment when he'd need me to save him. And that's when the real fun would begin. The day of the internal demo felt like standing at the edge of a storm. The whole department buzzed with fake enthusiasm, everyone pretending they were excited for Richard's big reveal. I sat quietly at the back of the conference room, pretending to take notes while my laptop rested on my knees, logged into the system's activity tracker. Richard strutted in wearing a navy suit and a smug smile. He looked like a man convinced he was untouchable. All right, team, he said, clapping his hands. Let's make this quick. Senior leadership will love this. It's our next big leap. He plugged in his laptop, opened the slides, my slides, and started his performance. What you'll see today is a fully automated system that can analyze and optimize data streams in real time, he announced confidently. The first few slides went smoothly. Charts animated on cue, the visuals crisp and polished. The decoy files were doing their job. I watched him speak with rehearsed charisma, explaining logic he didn't even understand. Every time he said, "I built this," my jaw tightened. Then he clicked to the final section, the part where the automation module was supposed to demonstrate live performance improvements. The room fell silent. The system froze. For a moment, no one breathed. The screen glitched, the command line flickered, and then a cold error message popped up in front of the entire team. Execution aborted. Missing core logic file. Richard froze. The confident grin melted off his face. He tried to recover, clicking frantically. A minor technical glitch, he said, his voice rising a little. Just give me a second here. He opened the terminal and tried to run the next line manually. Same result. Access denied, restricted credentials. Someone in the room coughed. Another whispered, restricted credentials? Richard's hands trembled slightly. It's fine. Just a small sync issue, he muttered, but the sweat on his forehead said otherwise. He clicked again. Nothing. The silence in the room turned heavy. You could feel it. That moment when everyone realized something was wrong. Finally, one of the senior engineers spoke. Richard, are you sure this build is ready? It looks like some files are locked under another user ID. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just kept my gaze on my laptop screen, watching the logs confirm what I already knew. The automation module was linked exclusively to my credentials. It couldn't run without them. Richard's voice cracked. Yeah, I'll fix it later. Let's, skip this part. But the damage was done. The illusion of control had shattered. The team murmured quietly as he fumbled through the remaining slides, rushing to the end. By the time he finished, he looked pale and shaken. When the meeting ended, people filed out in awkward silence. Emily walked past me, her expression calm but knowing. Carlos gave a subtle nod. Then, as the room emptied, Richard turned to me. Mark, he said quietly, his voice tight, you were supposed to check that build. I looked up at him evenly. I did. The version I finalized wasn't the one you used. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said carefully, you might have presented an incomplete version. He glared at me, realization dawning. You think you're clever, don't you? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He stormed out, muttering something under his breath, slamming his office door so hard the glass trembled. That night I stayed late again, not to gloat, but to make sure everything was clean. I backed up the system logs that showed his failed demo attempt, time-stamped under his user ID. The evidence was airtight. He tried to run a project that wasn't his and failed publicly doing it. I wasn't celebrating, though. Not yet. This was just the rehearsal. Because the next presentation, the real one, wasn't just a demo. It would be in front of the company's executive board and outside investors. Richard had 1 week to fix what he didn't understand. 1 week to try to rebuild a system that would only ever work through me. And when that day came, I'd be there again, sitting quietly, watching him walk straight into the trap he thought he'd escaped. The humiliation today was small. What was coming next would be unforgettable. The morning after the failed demo, the entire office felt different. People weren't saying it out loud, but I could feel it in the air. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the subtle way conversation stopped when Richard walked by. His confidence had cracked, and everyone smelled blood in the water. He tried to act unaffected, throwing around phrases like just a minor bug and a quick fix before the real presentation. But behind that mask, his panic was showing. His usual loud steps down the hallway had turned fast and clipped. He barely made eye contact with anyone. And when he called me into his office again, I knew this was going to get interesting. Mark, he said, forcing a tight smile, we've got 1 week before the executive demo. I need your full cooperation. No surprises. I folded my arms. Sure, but we'll need to rebuild part of the automation module. The one that failed wasn't the latest version. He glared at me. You mean the one you didn't send? I shrugged. I sent what was cleared for presentation. For a second, I thought he might explode. His jaw tightened, and his fingers drummed against the desk. Then suddenly, he leaned back and smiled. But not the usual confident smile. This one was strained, almost desperate. All right, he said softly. Fine. I'll need you to stay late this week and get it running. And, Mark? He paused. Don't make me regret trusting you. He was trying to reassert control, but I wasn't playing that game anymore. I gave him a calm nod. Understood. What he didn't know was that every fix, every improvement I made was being recorded, logged, and saved under my credentials. Emily helped me set up an automated backup that sent daily snapshots of the project to an encrypted folder. Each update clearly showed who made what changes. Meanwhile, Carlos was keeping an eye on the system's activity logs. Whenever Richard accessed a file, Carlos would quietly note it, tracking every unnecessary edit or deleted comment. By the third day, I had built a detailed digital timeline. Every line of code, every change, every mistake. If anyone ever questioned who created the core system, the data would tell the story better than I ever could. But the real setup wasn't in the files. It was in the presentation. I proposed to Richard that we do a live demo for the executive board, running the software in real time to showcase its accuracy and performance. He loved the idea, thought it would make him look bold and confident. What he didn't realize was that the demo required an internal authentication token, something that could only be generated from my personal account. Without it, the system would lock out all external users for security reasons. It wasn't sabotage, it was just good programming practice. But in this case, it also meant one thing. If Richard tried to run the system without me, it would fail. Still, I kept my tone cooperative. "I'll be there for setup," I said casually, "just to make sure everything runs smooth." He nodded quickly. "Good. Just don't say too much during the presentation. Let me handle the talking." "Of course," I said, hiding a smile. Emily pulled me aside later that day. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" I nodded. "He's been walking over everyone for years. This time, the truth's going to speak for itself." "Just make sure you stay clean," she said quietly. "Don't gloat, don't bait him. Let the facts talk." She was right. I wasn't after drama. Not anymore. I wanted exposure. I wanted the moment he realized the empire he'd built on lies was crumbling beneath his feet. The week passed quickly. Richard barely slept. You could see it in his bloodshot eyes and the dark circles under them. He was nervous, and he should have been. He had no idea the software he was about to present would only recognize one name: mine. The night before the big day, I stayed late to make sure everything was ready. The code was clean. The logs were saved. The metadata was untouched. And in the final slide, buried beneath layers of visuals and transitions, I hid one small text box, invisible to the naked eye but ready to appear if anyone clicked the wrong way. It read, "Created and engineered by Mark H." Not out of ego, but for truth, for closure. As I shut down my computer and grabbed my coat, I glanced through the glass walls of Richard's office. He was still there, pacing, muttering to himself, running through the slides again and again. Tomorrow, he'd walk into that boardroom full of executives and investors, confident that he'd pulled off the greatest performance of his career. And tomorrow, the truth would play out on the big screen, live, in front of everyone. The stage was set. The lights were waiting. And I was ready. The morning of the big presentation felt electric. The air in the lobby was thick with anticipation. Executives in press suits, investors sipping their coffees, and the tech team nervously fidgeting near the back of the conference hall. This wasn't just another demo. This was the kind of meeting that decided promotions, budgets, and futures. Richard stood near the stage, pacing like a man rehearsing his lines before a Broadway premiere. He looked sharp, collected, at least on the surface. But I could see the tension behind his eyes, the faint tremor in his hand when he adjusted his tie. "Mark," he said, catching my attention as I entered the room. "Everything's ready, right?" I nodded. "Everything's working perfectly. I double-checked the live module this morning." "Good," he said briskly. "Stay near the back. If anything goes wrong, you can jump in remotely." He didn't even make eye contact after that, just straightened his jacket and climbed onto the stage. The executives filed in, their conversation dying down as the lights dimmed. The giant screen behind Richard came alive with my slides, my layout, my data visualizations, my work. And as he began his speech, I could feel the familiar irritation boiling under my calm exterior. Ladies and gentlemen, he began smoothly, I'm proud to present the new data automation system, a project developed under my direction that's about to revolutionize our analytics process. He said it so easily, like he'd built it himself. But I wasn't here to argue. I was here to let him bury himself with his own arrogance. The first part went flawlessly. He clicked through the overview slides, showcasing the design and concept. The executives nodded approvingly, some even whispering to each other. Then came the live demo. Richard smiled, his voice confident. Now, let's see the system in action. Our real-time data module will optimize input streams automatically. He clicked the command. A moment's pause, then the login prompt appeared on the big screen. The system was asking for authentication. Richard froze, his smile faltering slightly. It's just a quick login, he muttered, typing his credentials. Access denied. He tried again, a little faster. Access denied. A murmur rippled through the room. I saw Emily glance at me from across the aisle. I didn't move, didn't blink. Richard's face turned pale under the stage lights. 1 second, he said, nervously trying again. Same result. The system refused him. The CTO, sitting in the front row, raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem, Richard? He forced a laugh. No, just a small permissions issue. Let me... And then it happened. The system automatically switched to recovery mode. A small gray text appeared in the bottom corner of the screen. Barely noticeable, but large enough to read, System owner, Mark H. High, authentication required. The silence in that room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the projector. Richard stared at the screen, speechless. Then his microphone caught the sound of his throat tightening as he whispered, What? The CTO leaned forward. Mark H.? He turned his head, scanning the audience. His eyes found me. Mark, that's you, isn't it? I stood up slowly, every eye in the room following me. Yes, sir, I said evenly. I developed and implemented the core module. The system's registered to my account for security. The CTO frowned. So, you're the lead engineer on this project? Richard cut in quickly, his voice strained. He assisted. I supervised. But before he could finish, one of the senior analysts spoke from the front row. Actually, all the task manager logs list Mark as the primary author. Every code commit, every test run, it's all under his name. You could see Richard's confidence collapse in real time. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked trapped, like a man realizing his own story had just been rewritten by truth. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply said, the project was always a team effort. I just wanted to make sure it was represented accurately. The CTO nodded slowly, then turned to Richard. We'll need to review the authorship records after the presentation. Richard's hands dropped to his sides. The microphone caught his exhale, heavy, defeated. He clicked off the slides and muttered, Let's move on. But no one was listening to him anymore. As I sat back down, Emily gave me the faintest smile. Carlos typed something on his tablet, probably saving the live stream recording. The truth was out, not through confrontation, but through precision, through proof. The meeting wrapped up shortly after, but the energy had completely changed. People were whispering again, not about Richard's brilliance this time, but about how I'd built something revolutionary and how he'd tried to take the credit. I didn't say another word. I didn't have to. Tomorrow the fallout would begin, but tonight the silence was enough. The next morning the office was dead silent. No jokes by the coffee machine, no chatter in the hallways, just quiet tension, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. And they were. Richard came in late. His usual swagger was gone. He moved slower, shoulders stiff, eyes down. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked human. Tired, cornered, and scared. I was at my desk when HR called. Mark, the voice on the line said, calm but serious. Can you come to conference room B? Bring your project documentation, please. I knew what this was. The review. When I walked in, the room was full. HR, the CTO, two senior executives, and Richard sitting at the far end of the table. He looked up at me, briefly, but his eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. There was no arrogance left in him. Mark, the CTO, began, "We've been reviewing the presentation from yesterday. There were discrepancies between what was presented and the ownership records in our system. We'd like to clarify a few points." I nodded calmly. Of course. They started asking questions. Timelines, workflow details, version histories. Every answer I gave was backed up by data. I had the receipts for everything. Git logs, time-stamped documents, email threads, even archived chat messages. When I showed the folder, neat, organized, undeniable, the room got quiet again. Finally, the CTO looked over at Richard. "Richard, would you like to explain why your name appears on multiple project deliverables authored by Mark?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He glanced around, searching for an escape, but there wasn't one. Everyone in that room had seen the evidence. Every version, every change, every trace led back to me. I guided the project, he stammered finally. It was under my supervision. "That's not what the documentation says," one of the executives replied. "You didn't contribute to the core module at all. In fact, most of your file edits were deletions." Richard's hands clenched. This is a misunderstanding." I spoke softly but clearly. I never wanted to take credit for his management, but I also couldn't stand by while my work was misrepresented. The truth is all right here. I slid a printed timeline across the table, color-coded, dated, signed by my review witnesses, Emily and Carlos. The CTO skimmed it, then leaned back, expression unreadable. "It's very thorough." Richard's face went pale. He tried to speak again, but his voice cracked. "You set me up," he muttered. "You planted this—" "No," I said evenly. "You did that yourself. You just never thought anyone would notice." The words hung in the air. Nobody spoke. Then HR quietly said, "Richard, could you step outside for a moment?" He hesitated, then stood up. For a brief second, his eyes met mine, not with anger, but with something closer to defeat. He walked out without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. The CTO turned to me. "Mark, we appreciate your professionalism and how you handled this. You could have taken this public or made a scene. Instead, you brought proof. That speaks volumes." I just nodded. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. It wasn't satisfaction yet. It was relief. After they dismissed me, I walked back to my desk. Emily was waiting there, pretending to scroll through her emails. When she saw my face, she raised an eyebrow. "Well?" she asked. "HR's handling it," I said simply. She smiled faintly. Receipts always win. That afternoon, an internal email went out. Corporate phrasing, neutral tone, but everyone knew what it meant. Effective immediately, Richard L. will be transitioning out of his current role pending review. No one said a word out loud, but the message spread like wildfire. I saw it in the glances, the hushed congratulations, the quiet respect. The man who once told me I was replaceable was gone. And me? I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just got back to work, the real work. The kind I could finally do without someone stealing my ideas or taking my voice. Later that evening, as the office emptied out, I opened the final presentation file, the same one that had exposed him, and added one last line to the closing slide in small, clean text at the bottom corner. Presented by me. This time it wasn't revenge. It was truth. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like freedom. It's been 6 months since that day. The day everything changed. The office feels different now. Quieter, healthier. The tension that used to sit like fog in every meeting room is gone. Richard never came back. Officially, the company said he moved on to pursue new opportunities. Unofficially, everyone knew he'd been let go after the audit confirmed what we all already knew. His pattern of taking credit wasn't limited to me. He'd been doing it for years. The CTO called me into his office a week later. I'll never forget what he said. "You handled yourself with restraint and integrity," he told me. "That's rare. We'd like you to lead the automation division going forward." I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say at first. Me, the guy who'd been invisible, dismissed, told he was replaceable, was now leading the very department that had almost broken me. I accepted. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally wanted to build something the right way. A team where credit was earned, not stolen. Emily became my senior data strategist. Carlos got a well-deserved promotion too. We built an open, transparent process where everyone's work was visible, credited, and appreciated. No hidden edits, no manipulation, no supervisors claiming brilliance they never had. And honestly, it changed everything. I started enjoying work again. I stopped waking up with that pit in my stomach, wondering what idea would be stolen next. I learned that the best revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's peace. It's walking into a place where the truth already speaks for you. Sometimes late at night, I still think about Richard, about how certain he was that he could control everything: people, stories, outcomes. Maybe that's the lesson in all of this. When your success is built on lies, it's just a matter of time before the truth catches up. The morning I signed the official documents for my promotion, I walked into the main conference room, in the same one where he once stood pretending to be me, and looked up at that same massive screen. It was blank, now waiting for the next big presentation. I smiled, pulled up the new deck for our upcoming project, and added a title slide. Presented by the team. Because this time it wasn't about ego. It was about all of us. And as I stood there in the quiet glow of the screen, I realized this was what winning really looked like. Not applause, not revenge, but finally being seen for who you are and what you truly built. So tell me, did I do the right thing? Was I justified in letting him fall by his own lies, or should I have taken a different path? What would you have done in my place? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Hit that like button and drop a comment. I read every single one. Your support helps me keep sharing these true, gripping stories that prove one thing. In the end, receipts always win.